All right, today we're going on a journey deep inside a single leaf to really get our heads around one of the most incredible processes on the entire planet, photosynthesis. It's the silent engine that powers pretty much everything, and we're about to see exactly how it works.
And look, I know that sounds like a huge claim, but it is absolutely true. From the biggest trees you could imagine to the tiniest plankton in the ocean, almost every living thing is powered by this one silent process. It's where the energy in our food comes from, and it's where the oxygen we breathe comes from.
So that's the real mystery we're tackling, isn't it? How does something you can't even touch, like a beam of sunlight, become the actual physical stuff of a plant? And then, how does that become the energy for just about everything else?
To answer that, first, we got to zoom out and just look at the big picture. You really have to think of photosynthesis as the fundamental engine driving our planet's whole ecosystem.
Okay, so here's the textbook definition, but let's just make it simple. Think of it like nature's ultimate recipe. The ingredients? Light, water, and carbon dioxide. The final product is sugar, glucose to be exact, which is pure chemical energy. Oh, and it has a super important byproduct, oxygen. This whole ability to make its own food is what makes a plant a self-feeder, or what scientists call an autotroph.
Now for the fun part. Let's zoom in. And I mean way in. We're going inside a single plant cell to find the exact spot where all this magic happens.
And here it is. Meet the chloroplast. This tiny little thing is the absolute heart of the operation. So for the rest of this explainer, I really want you to picture it as a factory, a really sophisticated, self-contained factory that runs entirely on solar power. Now this factory is perfectly organized into two main departments. First up, you've got the thylakoids. Picture these as stacks of solar panels, all designed to capture sunlight. This is where the energy collection happens. Then you've got the stroma. This is like the main factory floor, a fluid-filled space where all that captured energy is used to actually build the final product.
So who's on this light-catching team? Well, the star player, no doubt, is chlorophyll A. It's the primary pigment that gives plants that green color we all recognize. But, and this is key, it doesn't work alone. It's got a whole support crew of other pigments, like chlorophyll B and carotenoids, and their job is to grab different wavelengths of light, making sure the factory absorbs as much solar energy as it possibly can.
Okay, so how does this factory's solar power plant actually work? Let's dive into the first major stage, where the raw energy from the sun gets converted into something the factory can actually use.
You can think of photosynthesis as a two-act play. Act 1 is the photochemical phase, also known as the light reactions. This all happens in those solar panels, the thylakoids. It takes in light and water, and it produces oxygen and, most importantly, charges up the factory's rechargeable batteries. These are two special molecules called ATP and NADPH. Then comes Act 2, the biosynthetic phase, which takes place on the factory floor, the stroma. It uses the power from those batteries to turn CO2 into glucose.
So, how do these light reactions actually work? It's really this elegant three-step dance. First, sunlight hits the chlorophyll and excites its electrons, kicking them into a high-energy state. Second, to replace those lost electrons, a water molecule gets split apart. And get this is the exact moment the oxygen we breathe is created. It's basically the factory's exhaust. And third, the energy from those excited electrons is used to charge up our energy batteries, ATP and NADPH, getting them ready for the next phase. But how are those ATP batteries actually charged? Well, this part is just genius. The factory builds up a high concentration of protons, kind of like water building up behind a dam. Then it lets those protons rush out through a tiny molecular turbine, which spins incredibly fast and generates a ton of ATP. It's just a masterpiece of biological engineering.
All right, so we've captured the sun's energy. We've charged our batteries. Now it's time to head over to the main factory floor and actually build something with all that power.
And this is the whole point, right? Those fully charged batteries, ATP and NADPH, are now ready to be used. They're going to deliver their stored energy to the assembly line to power the construction of the final product, that stable, long-term energy molecule, glucose.
This assembly line is called the Calvin cycle. It happens in 3 basic steps. First, an amazing enzyme called rubisco literally grabs a molecule of CO2 right out of the air. That's called carbon fixation. Second, using the power from our ATP and NADPH batteries, the cycle transforms that carbon into sugar. And third, the cycle resets itself so it's ready to grab the next CO2 molecule that comes along. It's just this continuous self-powering loop.
But, this amazing system isn't perfect. That star enzyme of the Calvin cycle, rubisco, has a tiny little flaw. A flaw that evolution eventually had to find a clever way to solve.
So here's the problem. It's called photorespiration. In most plants, which we call C3 plants, rubisco it gets confused, especially on hot, dry days. Instead of grabbing CO2, it sometimes mistakenly grabs an oxygen molecule. And when that happens, it starts this wasteful process that actually burns energy and releases CO2. It basically undermines the whole point of photosynthesis. It's a big drain on efficiency.
So to solve this, some plants, like corn and sugarcane, evolved an upgrade. We call them C4 plants. They have this brilliant extra step where they first capture CO2 in an outer cell, and then they physically pump that concentrated CO2 deeper inside to a special cell where rubisco is waiting. This system pretty much eliminates the photorespiration problem and allows these plants to just thrive in hot, bright environments.
Okay, so we've seen the machinery, we've seen the processes, we've even seen the evolutionary upgrades. Let's zoom back out one last time to really appreciate why this tiny microscopic factory is so incredibly important to our huge macroscopic world.
You gotta remember, this global engine isn't always running at full throttle. The factory can't run at full speed without the right conditions. The rate of photosynthesis is totally dependent on things like how bright the light is, how much CO2 is in the air, the temperature, and of course, how much water is available. A change in any one of these can have a massive ripple effect on the entire planet.
When you really boil it all down, the key takeaway is just the sheer scale of its impact. From the energy in the food you eat to the actual oxygen filling your lungs right now, it all traces back to this one silent, amazing conversion of light into life. It's not just some process that happens in a plant. It's the process that literally creates and sustains our world.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Nature has spent billions of years perfecting a completely clean, incredibly efficient solar-powered energy system. As we're all looking for sustainable ways to power our own future, maybe, just maybe, the best blueprint has been right here all along, quietly working away inside a single green leaf.